Welcome to gomotalks about the origins of the Palestinians. I want to start with a warning. This talk will challenge some deeply held assumptions, but I ask you to hear me out for two reasons. Firstly, we should never avoid the truth simply because it may be inconvenient. The historical record matters. We cannot understand the past or hope to build a better future without it. Secondly, once you get over the challenge, you may find that the truth offers hope. After I've explored the origins of the Palestinians, I'm going to raise a very radical proposal that might, just maybe, represent a uniquely optimistic path forward. One that suggests that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can end not in a lose-lose or even a win-lose, but with everyone winning more than they thought was available to win. A victory greater than the sum of its parts for everyone involved. So let's discuss the most common claims made regarding the origins of the Palestinians and investigate their accuracy. To begin with, the claim that the Palestinians are the same people as the ancient Philistines. At face value, this seems logical. The terms Philistine and Palestinian sound similar and do have the same phonetic origins. The Philistines were an ancient people who lived broadly in modern-day Gaza. So perhaps the Palestinians are their modern-day descendants. It sounds good, but there are some holes here. Firstly, the Philistines weren't initially local. Their leaders were likely from the Greek islands, invaders from the sea during the Bronze Age collapse. The Philistines engaged in ongoing conflict with the ancient Israelites and other neighboring peoples, before being defeated by the Babylonians in around 604 BCE. Much of the Philistine leadership was then subsequently exiled to Babylon. By the end of the 5th century, the Philistines had essentially left the historical record. We know little about their language, their beliefs, or even what they called themselves in their own tongue. Local application of the term Philistine did resurface centuries later. In 135 CE, the Romans renamed Judea Syria Palestina. But this had nothing to do with an existing Philistine culture or people at that time, as there was not one. Rather, it was punishment for the Jewish Bar Kokhba revolt. So the Philistines were not local, had a relatively short presence in the land, and left little identifiable ancestral or cultural continuity. All of this is to say that we do not have meaningful evidence to suggest connections between modern-day Palestinians and the ancient Philistines. For this, we must look elsewhere. What about the suggestion that the Palestinians are Arab in origin, meaning that they are the descendants of people from the Arabian Peninsula? Studies of Palestinian DNA do indicate genetic heritage from the Arabian Peninsula, but on average, it is a minority component. Arabs did indeed conquer the land in the 7th century CE, during the early Islamic expansions. But they did not replace the existing population. Instead, Arabs settled in small numbers, occasionally intermarrying, and over a very long period, culturally assimilating the existing locals. The adoption of the Arabic language and Islamic faith occurred gradually over many centuries. Obviously, modern Palestinians identify as an Arab people. But the Arab identity of modern Palestinians is primarily cultural, not ancestral. So the origins of the Palestinians cannot be comprehensively found amongst the Arabs either. Again, we will have to continue looking elsewhere. Another suggestion often made is that the Palestinians are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites, another rival people of ancient Israel. Well, the Canaanites certainly did live in the region. But by the late First Temple period, over 2,500 years ago, we can no longer identify a distinct Canaanite culture in the land of Israel. Despite this, DNA research indicates that modern Palestinians do carry southern Levantine DNA. DNA often associated with Bronze Age Canaanites in the literature. Fascinatingly, comparisons of genomic sequences suggest that Palestinians and all major Jewish diaspora communities, Mizrahi, Sephardi, and Ashkenazi, share a common southern Levantine ancestry. A common ancestry that represents the single largest genetic heritage identifiable in the DNA of every one of those groups. This is a striking point to consider. Both Jews and Palestinians have maintained exceptional genetic similarity within their respective subgroups over millennia of conquest and exile. Remarkably, they have also maintained significant genetic similarity with each other. Yes, including Palestinians and Ashkenazi Jews. But if the Canaanites were no longer identifiable as a distinct culture for over 1,000 years prior to the 7th century Arab conquest, how did modern Palestinians inherit southern Levantine DNA? And how is that DNA shared with modern Jews? It's probably worth remembering here that Jews formed a majority or plurality in the land of Israel for over a millennium. This led to several choke points when the majority of southern Levantine DNA almost certainly passed through Israelites and Jews. This is, of course, irrespective of earlier or later pagan, Samaritan, or Christian identities. Some historians even suggest there may still have been a Jewish plurality, or even majority, Jewish identifying at the time of the 7th century Arab conquest. Others disagree. At the very least, Jews were still a large minority. So are the origins of the Palestinians to be found amongst the Canaanites? Well, that depends on what one means by Canaanite. It is likely hard to identify one's origins amongst a population whose culture has not been distinguishable for 2,500 years. But if by Canaanite we mean carrying mostly southern Levantine DNA, then yes. The caveat is that this DNA has been passed down via people with a long string of changing cultural identities, pagan, Samaritan, and Christian as mentioned amongst them. But crucially, in the majority of instances, almost certainly passing through Jews. Now, some may be confused at this point. One might ask how such a large and continuous presence of people of Jewish descent was possible after the Roman destruction of the Second Jewish Temple in 70 CE. Wasn't there a 2,000-year-long exile? Well, yes, there was an exile, but not the total exile many imagine. Following the pattern of most ancient exiles, it was an exile of elites and choice slaves. Most of the population, especially the rural farming population, was left behind. After 70 CE, Jews in the land codified the Mishnah and the Jerusalem Talmud. They built new institutions, towns, and synagogues, and continuously revolted against the Romans. This included not only the Bar Kokhba revolt, which ended around 135 CE, but also multiple subsequent revolts over the next 5 centuries. The last revolt, known as the Revolt against Heraclius of the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, even saw Jews temporarily regain control of Jerusalem from around 614 to 617 CE. It's worth noting that this was during Muhammad's own lifetime, and only 20 years prior to the Islamic conquest of Jerusalem. The 2,000-year exile we speak of never saw a complete Jewish absence from the land. It was a loss of sovereignty and a fluid process of ongoing persecution. This process continuously forced waves of Jews to follow one of two terrible paths: leave the land to remain Jews, or leave Judaism to remain in the land. That is the real source of the gradual reduction of the Jewish population over time. So what does all this mean when considering the origins of the Palestinians? Well, here it is. Palestinians are the descendants of people who have largely been in the land as long as Jews. Because for most Palestinians, their ancestry almost certainly includes Jews. If anyone imagines I am the first to realize this, they would be mistaken. Many Palestinians have been, and remain, aware of their Jewish ancestry. This was also well known and openly discussed by Jews in the past, with a plethora of existing primary sources available to us. But I began by saying that after the challenge, this knowledge might provide ground for hope. Let me lay that out. Palestinians have rejected partition of the land multiple times. This has often been interpreted as short-sighted and ultimately self-destructive. There are now Israelis whose great-grandparents were born as citizens of an independent Israel. By contrast, Palestinians remain stateless. It may seem that the Palestinian refusal to accept something has left them with nothing, whilst the Israeli willingness to accept something has been vindicated. But let's consider an alternative analysis, a wild hypothesis. What if that uncompromising Palestinian connection to the land is in some deep, complex, ancestral way Jewish? Hear me out. Ironically, it is the Palestinian refusal to accept a division of the land that has kept it whole. This unwavering commitment to the wholeness of the land has, to my eyes, a peculiar parallel. Modern Jews are Jews today due to their ancestors' intergenerational willingness to sacrifice everything rather than losing their Jewish identity. Modern Palestinians are in the land today due to their ancestors' intergenerational willingness to sacrifice everything rather than losing their presence in the land. Over 2,000 years of exile, most Jews were repeatedly forced to choose Judaism without the land or the land without Judaism. So can modern Jews and modern Palestinians be understood as the descendants of the same people who went down alternate paths? Descendants now once again living side by side. To be certain, both peoples have primarily viewed each other's presence as an obstacle. And I'm not for a moment minimizing what that has meant. But is it possible that this is also an opportunity? What if modern Jews can now offer Palestinians access to their ancestral heritage, which the centuries robbed them of? What if Palestinians can offer Jews partnership in their ancestral land, which the centuries equally robbed them of? Do both peoples now have the capacity to help each other, to be more mutually secure in their identity and sovereignty than at any point in the last 2,000 years? One might instinctively reject as inconceivable the suggestion that Palestinians will ever willingly re-engage with an ancestral Jewish identity. To be absolutely clear, I am not proposing, nor would I support, imposing an identity on Palestinians by manipulation, coercion, or force, not in terms of religion, language, or culture. It is ultimately for Palestinians to determine who they are. But is engaging with one's ancestral heritage, especially if that heritage is also the contemporary identity of one's neighbours, so unimaginable? At the very least, it could help people understand each other better. That is not nothing. Similarly for Jews, recognizing shared ancestry with Palestinians may seem irrelevant right now, unfathomable, perhaps even undesirable. But the past shared by Jews and Palestinians is not deniable. The question is what that shared past might mean for both people's future. It's easy to perceive the past as fixed. What happened, happened, and it cannot be changed. On one level, that is obviously true. But how we understand the past does continuously change, because we always see the past through our own ever-transforming filters. Sometimes our filters are so thick that we see something in the past that no longer resembles the past at all. But over time, our filters transform. If we look back as openly and honestly as we can, the past offers us more than we could ever possibly exhaust. We just need to look. History alone does not dictate our fate, but it can help guide us in imagining and building the best possible future. In Tehillim, the book of Psalms, we find the words, "When God will return the captives of Zion, we will be like dreamers." My wish for Jews and Palestinians alike is a future inspired by the unfiltered past. That might seem like an absurd dream right now, I know. But if Jewish history teaches us one lesson, it is that the wildest of dreams have a way of becoming reality. Thank you.